Hello and welcome to the New Zealand Retirement Podcast. I'm your host, Raiden Page, joined by my co-host and certified financial planner, John Milner. In this week's episode, we're diving into the complexities of retirement planning. We'll explore how much is truly enough for a comfortable retirement, discuss the impact of different investment strategies, and consider the importance of having a purpose beyond financial security. Our conversation will touch on the 4% and 5% rules, the role of Monte Carlo simulations and their significance of diversifying your portfolio. Whether you're planning to retire soon or just starting to think about it, this episode is full of insights to help you navigate your financial future. Let's jump into it then. Actually, as you said, there's the Massey study, which is giving indications of what the average New Zealander is spending inside of retirement. But there's other things like the 4% rule, which sets an idea for the limit in a bad market with a balanced portfolio.
4%, 6%. There's lots of them out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also those in retirement, which I've met a couple that are thinking, oh, I might just want to go higher growth. I might want to go 80% growth assets or 100% growth assets, and I want to go that way. So it'd be also interesting to talk about what's the impact of going from the sort of 4% rule or 6% rule in the balanced portfolio versus doing it in like a growth or a growth sort of approach.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to a number of things in that situation with people in retirement, really what their timeline is. I should appreciate when we talk about more growth, putting our foot on the accelerator, as it were, it does attract more, or can attract more volatility. But again, what are we talking here? We're possibly looking at the sort of short to medium term volatility. The longer we have, we're in, it tends to smooth out. But not everybody has got 20 years ahead of them, or 30 years ahead of them. If you're talking about somebody in retirement, they certainly could have 25 years ahead of them. You could be talking to an 80-year-old or a 75-year-old who may not have that duration. And so we've got to be very careful about that. They may have the appetite for that volatility, but do they have the duration for it to smooth out, given that average return that they need?
Absolutely. The way I sort of think about it when I sort of speak to these sort of clients that are saying, oh yeah, what if we go a little bit higher growth? Is I say, okay, well, we're probably going to need to use the variable return method if that's the way you want to go, where we use guardrails. And so say we're drawing, 5% on average. After the market takes a 10% hit, you've got to drop your income by 10% because you can't still be drawing on your investments at that same rate. We have to use a variable rate at that stage. Otherwise, what you'll get is you'll increase the probability of dropping income with the sequence of returns risk.
Yeah. I guess I rely a reasonable amount on Monte Carlo. I've been using it for 20, 25 years. And it's put my clients in a good position. So I guess I've been ultimately under-promising and ultimately over-delivering using that. And it certainly gives me confidence, and I'd like to think it gives my clients confidence, that's for sure. But it's funny, isn't it, when you're dealing with retirees, it can be very difficult to get them to spend. That's for sure. They can afford it, but they tend not to want to spend. And as I tell them, there's no reward, there's no gold star for being the richest person in the cemetery.
And
it just isn't.
It is tricky because at that age, you're sort of on the other side of the risk spectrum because you're looking at this money. You're going, this is the money that I have for the rest of my life. I don't really think there's going to be much other money coming in.
Yeah.
So you're quite risk averse at that stage, and that money does have a very specific job to do. So with something like a Monte Carlo, which for anybody listening, Monte Carlo basically looks at a series of assumptions and says, okay, based on what we know about the past, let's project out if we were to live through, say, 1,000 different iterations of return sequences. What would it look like in terms of how likely we are to outlive our money under a given number of those sequences? So out of those 1,000, how many of those sequences are successful for us outliving our money to age 90 or 95?
Probability calculator.
Yeah.
We use the bottom 25. It's the under-promising, and in the end, we tend to be over-delivering, which is good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's I guess it all comes down with the Monte Carlo is what are the inputs? Are they reasonable inputs to the system? Because obviously crap in, crap out. So they've got to be realistic as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's one thing I sort of hear in the DIY space is that it's really easy to fall into that. Oh, it's a the average sort of growth expectation has been 10 years for the S&P 500 over the past however long, it's been 10%. So I'm just going to project out that it's 10%. And we go, okay, well, we're not thinking about inflation in that. We're not thinking about a diversified portfolio. That's just 500 companies inside of just the US. And if that has a bad time for a 10-year period, which is totally possible, it can totally throw out your whole retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the inputs that I use help a little bit with a gentleman from Mass University who helps with those inputs. In fact, I think he's going to be doing a talk on that through our association coming up in the next week or two on long-term returns. So it'll be interesting to see what he's got to say about that. We'd like to think that they're well, they're not. You couldn't say they're accurate, but I think they're based on a good foundation coming from Massey.
Absolutely.
And as you say, though, you look at the last 10 years of the S&P, well, maybe that's been a great bull run. Maybe you could expect, a bit of a bear market in the next 10, who knows? So I think certainly you'd need more than 10 years, that's for sure. We like to look at sort of, if we can get decades of data to make that, anything of significance would be decades, that's for sure.
Yeah. I was actually listening to some of Bill Bingen's latest work, where he was the original founder, I guess, in the academics of the 4% rule. And what he's saying now is we're actually moved from the 4% rule to the 5% rule.
Yes.
We've increased it effectively to the 5% rule because the new study is a lot more indicative of what an average sort of portfolio would actually be in terms of diversification. His old study was based on short-term treasury bills and I think just the S&P 500. Diversifying that out to different areas of shares means that you basically can lift that safe withdrawal rate up from 4% to 5%, and you should still be okay.
So there are companies outside of the S&P, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah.
Not many Americans know that. A well-kept secret.
And that's the other thing that we tackle here as well, hey, because a lot of what we get is the media from the US, and so we see, well, we'll just chuck everything in the S&P, and well, you could do that. It is a strategy.
Let's be honest too, it does house around about 55% of all global listed companies in the world. So it does have a fair chunk, but to say it's only just over half, isn't it?
Yeah, and we just want to increase certainty that no matter what happens in the future, your retirement's going to be secure. So to do that, we need to say, okay, yes, the US has done very well. And there's a number of indicators, such as the Cape-Shiller ratio, that's saying it's not looking as bright as it once did because of high valuations.
Sure.
So what's going to be a good idea is diversifying out. One of those diversifiers is looking at companies that are small to medium in size. Another one is those that are value based. That is, they have a value tilt. Do you have an easy way of explaining what a value company is?
Yeah, a value company is a company where it has a higher book value than its market value. So I guess somebody would look at that and say, well, it's underpriced. Well, it's a favourite, obviously, of Warren Buffett as well, being a value investor himself. We did see probably a good 10-year gap in that value market, as did Warren Buffett. But he's in it for the long game. He's been there, for many, many years, and some stellar returns where he's really just bought and held, and waded through those gaps.
Yeah, it's interesting from an academic perspective when you're constructing portfolios and thinking about, because you've got small and medium cap as one potential source of premium. You've got the value premium. You've got the profitability premium. So companies that are more profitable tend to do better than those that are less profitable. And you've got the other premium that's just that I can never remember the name of because nobody ever talks about it.
Momentum?
Yeah, probably that one. So you've got those premiums, and what you can do is add them to retirement portfolios to increase the likelihood that you can not only outperform the market in the long term, but the other side of adding those premiums is the diversification benefit. So
Absolutely.
that if we see a market drawdown, because those aspects of shares do well, on the recovery side, it recovers a lot better.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it might go deeper, but because of the higher volatility, it recovers and can recover more than what those sort
Absolutely.
of large cap would be able to do.
Absolutely, which I think people feel more, don't they? They feel the pain more than they feel the highs of success.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's important that we get a good quick recovery. At the end of the day, when markets go down, they go down. As I say many times, I don't have Harry Potter's business card. When things are going down, they're going down, but maybe you can cushion that fall perhaps, or as I say, have a faster recovery. And isn't it funny how when you are in those markets when they're down, it really does feel like a very long time. But in reality, when you look back, it wasn't, as a timeline goes, it really wasn't that long. Was it 2 years, 18 months, maybe even less than that sometimes? So
Absolutely.
it's again, it's just being the patient investor, isn't it? It really is. You want to plant a tree. It's not going to, you're not going to wake up the next morning and it's fully grown. You have to be patient.
Absolutely. And give it the chance to grow.
Absolutely.
Because naturally,
Right. Yes.
when we see those downturns, what we're often saying to clients, because we'll get the question, right, like, is now the time that we should pull out of it and potentially get back into it? But we've got to keep in mind that on a probability basis, I think it's something like 70 to 80%
Mhm.
of after downturns are extreme positive periods
Totally. Absolutely.
to have that recovery. So it's always a poor decision on a probability basis to pull out when it's gone down.
Absolutely. That's right. It's possibly even tougher to guess when to get back in than when to get out. So why try? There's very few people, if any, actually get it right. And when they do get it right, the numbers seem to stack up that it was really probably sheer luck more than anything else
Absolutely.
that they were at the right time. And we've had some big managers, very large managers here in New Zealand, show that it isn't easy. During the lockdowns, was a very big manager that we studied recently, where they got back in far too late. They should have got in earlier, come back into the markets earlier, and they paid that. That was the price they paid.
Absolutely.
So you can look back and track that and see where they went possibly wrong. Yeah, trying to second guess markets is just it's just not going to work.
Yeah. A losing battle for sure.
Absolutely. So what else, so how else do you think you'd actually work out what's enough for people, do you think?
So I think the one thing that we don't talk about enough is what are you currently spending? What are you currently spending in your life? And then what do you want to continue doing in retirement? What does your life in retirement actually look like? Because we could have, massive studies to look at what retirees are spending, but realistically everyone has different goals. Some people, like my parents, they want to sit at home, be visited by family, they want to have a pretty chill lifestyle, maybe travel once a year up and down New Zealand. They have a once in a lifetime sort of goal to go to Dubai,
Hmm.
these sorts of things. I've talked to other families that they go, no, I need to spend $102,000 a year because we are traveling all over the world. We're spending $20,000 a year on travel. And that's something that we want to do into potentially our 70s, because you sort of lose some activity sort of mid 70s and onwards, pretty tired by that point. You've sort of done it. They're saying, look, I want to travel for like the next 10 years on 20 grand a year. That's where I think we can really have that conversation of what can your investments then support once we have that benchmark of what do you actually want to do and what does the perfect retirement look like where you're living 5-star travel 4 weeks a year versus what is a perfectly high quality retirement look like for you while still meeting the base goals that you're really looking at.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that's where I think we can say, based on the 5% rule, which is a starting point, right? Which is bad markets, balanced portfolio, 60/40. So you're still getting some volatility, but you hopefully have a financial advisor that walks alongside you to walk you through that volatility. And if you're ever uncomfortable with that volatility, you have a conversation with the advisor and hopefully they make you feel at peace.
I was just laughing then because I'm a little bit older than you, but I kind of chuckled when you said, they might want to, slow down when they're into their 70s. They might have got over that. But, for some people, their life starts when they're 70.
Mm, mm,
Clients I mean, 70s nothing really. Both my parents are 87 and they're only now just this year decided that, what, I think we're probably getting a bit old now for traveling. And they've
mm.
traveled every year around the world, every year for years and years and years and years. And it's only now at 87 that they said, you know what, this is getting a bit. My dad would love to continue. Mum's kind of over it. She really is. And let's face it, you kind of need a holiday after a holiday, don't you? It's exhausting.
I think that's such a wonderful point as well because I know an old colleague, dad is 90 something, and he's painting every day and
Yeah.
walking around and doing things. He's active in the community, all those sorts of
Okay.
things. And that's the problem with this, that it is actually quite an individual
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. But we are
Yeah.
living longer. We
Yeah.
are, although it doesn't feel like it sometimes, we are healthier. Look back a few decades at somebody of, of 70 and they'd be on their deathbed. We're all living longer and healthier. And so the downside of that is we're going to need more money,
Yeah,
fortunately.
exactly. Yeah, do you see with your clients that they start slowing down at any point of age on average, or
Yeah, I suppose it's probably the 80s is when they slow down. Yeah, honestly, I've got a client who's she's not 80 yet. She'd be mid to late 70s, and there she is. She owns an apartment. Well, we've got down to one apartment now. She owned a few properties, down to one apartment, and she owns a mobile home, and she tows a small car behind that. And she's been travelling for the last at least 2 years, maybe longer. Actually, I met her during the lockdown. She's been doing that just after the lockdown. She was doing that just traveling up and down the country, meeting new people, catching up with old friends, and living her best life. And she must be at least 77. She's healthy, she's vibrant, living her best life.
okay, so there's
So
still
70 is
a
70
lot
is
of life even
still pretty.
70s. Wow.
Still 70 is still pretty young for a lot of people. Yeah, you're going to get some old 70s, but there's a lot of people out there. 70s is nothing these days.
Right. Okay, well that's good to know. All the more reason to have it close to the 5% rule maybe for New Zealand, because the Americans, don't they live until sort of 83 is their current sort of lifespan, and ours is like 87.
Yeah. Yeah, I think women of 87.
And that's people these days, not in the future. When we get to 87, we're going to be living
Yeah.
until like 100.
Yeah, yeah,
My
it's true.
generation.
Then again, are people going to be, well, people are. I think people are working longer too. I've got a number of colleagues and people in different industries where, in fact, my doctor said that he's going to stop working in his practice at 70. He's 62. Well, I'm about to turn 62. He's 62 as well. But he can see that he'll be probably doing the Zoom call advice, medical advice, for probably another good 5 years after that,
Fantastic.
for some extra pocket money.
Well, at least that's on the good side if we're seeing a willingness to
Yeah.
work longer, because that
Yeah.
will
Oh, yeah, yeah,
support.
absolutely. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people where they can physically work longer and they genuinely love their work. I mean, I can see me coming up 62. I can see myself easily working till uh, probably between 70 and 75. My dad stopped work at 80. So I can see myself. And what was my father-in-law? Father-in-law, he was 73. Yeah, he was 73 when he stopped work. And then he got really busy at retirement.
It is almost a retirement optional, isn't it? It's sort of a work optional sort of approach to life, and growing that wealth and having that choice, and then
Well,
still working because you love to do it.
yeah, well, one of the big things that I'm starting to get into now with people is for retirement is purpose. Because we all need purpose in life. We really do. If you can imagine that you've been working all your life, you've had people surrounding you, you've got things to do, a reason to get up, whether you like it or not, and all of a sudden, bang, you're retired. Those people are no longer around you. You don't have purpose. You don't have engagement with people around you. That could be pretty tough for some people, which is why I guess some drop dead not long after that. I mean, I knew an advisor in the South Island that retired, cleaned out his desk, said goodbye to the girls in the office after he sold the business, went straight to the golf course that afternoon and dropped dead on the green. And he wasn't actually that old either, really. He had a young child, second marriage, young child. It can happen. But we need purpose. And I think what we need is, I think as advisors, we need to really start looking at how we can upskill to give advice in that area about providing purpose and re-energize yourself in life for a second. You've got to basically reinvent yourself, especially for males. Women, as far as I'm concerned anyway, women have to reinvent themselves their whole lives, from going from school to work, becoming a mother. They're having to reinvent themselves, whereas blokes, we just keep marching on straight through. We don't have to adapt as much as women do, that's for sure. And so we don't have the tools to be able to do that, I think, when we go into retirement. And so I think we can help our clients a lot in that area as well. But we need to upskill in that area. We need to find some tools.
That ties in well to how much is enough, in terms of how much is enough to live the life that actually brings you that purpose. Because that, I mean, perfectly honestly, in my life, my purpose is this work. It's retirement planning. It's being and a bloody good financial advisor. That's my purpose. I'm thinking, just do this for the rest of my life. Why not? And that probably brings a lot of wealth in of itself. So maybe there's not as much need to save. Now I will, because I'm a financial advisor, but there's not potentially as needing as much investment absolutely need on the retirement side because of that longer. So being on the, maybe coming up to retirement in the 50s and 90s, and you're saying, this work is actually work I really, really enjoy. This is work that I intend to do until 70, 75. It's something that I think I will be able to do. I think that ties into how much is enough as well. And we can sort of run those numbers. Might be useful just to use the 5% rule for a moment, because that 5% rule, again, balanced portfolio, that's how much you can draw from a set amount that you have saved. So let's say, I don't know, $400,000, for example. So 5% of 400,000, $20,000 a year above New Zealand Super. New Zealand Super, 27,000, I think, this year for an individual. So that's 47,000 in retirement. But if you're going to work for those first, 10 years past 65, you could bank super, build that investment up a bit more, and live off your income. Then the investment, gets a little bit more up there, say 600,000 by the time you actually want to wind down. We use the 5% rule again, there's $30,000 a year. And this is a worst case scenario, by the way, that 5%. So that's actually a fantastic outcome in terms of how much is enough.
Yeah, I think some people are being frightened into thinking they're going to need, millions and millions of dollars. And I guess, as you say, the older you get, you tend to slow down at some point in the future. Your need isn't as great. It's not as if, 1 minute past the age of 65, you're going to be, going on, amazing trips all around the world and doing everything. After a while, that becomes rather tiresome, and you want to just live a normal everyday life and get on with things. But again, go back to my father-in-law. He retired at 73 and then continued working with people like the local RSA and the local bowling club, doing their books, the accounts. He would work a lot with the St. Vincent de Paul Society, providing food parcels, really helping out in the community. So it was really fulfilling in purpose for him. And it really obviously helped with the community as well. So in some respects, on the balance sheet, he wasn't a wealthy man, but certainly for purpose and a meaningful life, he was very wealthy. And he did that to the day he died. He really enjoyed himself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is retirement planning, isn't it? Well,
yeah.
Can be. Having those conversations and pushing to actually encourage to do that. Because it is also, unfortunately, easy to go, I'm just going to sit on the lawn, and then you get bored after 3 months to a year.
You need purpose. We all need we need some sort of purpose in life. I mean, technically speaking, this is my 10th year in semi-retirement. From the age of 52, I was able to have a modest retirement. But what would I do at 52? I'd be bored, and being able to serve my clients is really meaningful for me. So I will continue doing so. So what about, not getting too political here now, but from the age of 65, and as Jane Wrightson, the retirement commissioner, said in an event last week, which was really good, honest truth that she was speaking, I think. She said, look, the truth is, I know politicians and people say that, this retirement benefit over the next 20 odd years is going to be unsustainable. She said, look, it's likely to be 6 to 8% of GDP, at its hardest time with the baby boomers coming through. She said, we can afford it. It's just a case of whether the government chooses to spend the money they have on that or not. The fact is, it's not an unreasonable level that we're going to be getting to with that benefit as against the GDP. It is affordable. So I think there's a lot of people being scared for no good reason, really.
Yeah,
Sure,
absolutely.
it's not enough. Don't get me wrong, it's not enough. I don't believe it's enough. People do survive on it somehow, but who wants to just survive? We want to have a reasonable retirement with a reasonable income to have choices. But yeah, as for frightening people about retirement, the super, I think it's a bit unreasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also worth thinking about that super does actually have a monetary value to it. If you try to invest instead of super, say they just cut it out tomorrow, it's about $500,000 that you would need to replace super.
Yeah.
So that's pretty big political football to
Oh, it
get
is,
over
yeah,
the line. We're
yeah,
actually going to take $500,000 off of
that's right. Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely. But, don't you think, though, to a certain extent, and I hate the idea of means testing, but it does seem a little unfair when somebody is making, which I know there's people out there, I personally know that are making, three, four, $500,000 a year in retirement, still picking up that retirement benefit.
Yeah, and I mean, you could mean test it. I think you could mean test it at a reasonably high point, because what I worry about is those people that have run the numbers and they've said, okay, I want to spend that the $40,000 I'm going to get in super. That is my money for travel and that's the family travel budget in
Yes.
um in life, which I thinking about that from a underprivileged sort of background,
Sure.
that feels pretty sinful. But they've in any way they've made that plan that money is going to be for something. If you're suddenly going to say, oh, actually we're going to means test that does have a very real impact on those people. They suddenly cannot do what they planned to do.
Pretty high level. Yeah, at a high level. I think it would be reasonable at a high level to try and make it affordable. Then again, though, when you come down to it, though, I guess realistically, how many people drawing the benefit that benefit are making that income, are making that money. Maybe perhaps in reality, although we've got information where we know of people that are making those big dollars, but realistically, are there many of those out there
Yeah,
to really
probably
bother,
not.
to make it an issue, perhaps?
Yeah, and the administration cost of everyone
Yeah, that's right.
having to be
Everybody
means
being
tested.
means tested. Realistically, maybe I don't know the numbers. I don't know if there's not that many. Well, then what's the point? It's not really worth worrying about, I guess.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Money is really important. It's essential, but it's not everything. Yeah, maybe we should start skilling up over the next few years on how to actually add purpose to our clients' lives.
Absolutely. And I think you're familiar with George Kinder's work
Hmm.
in financial life planning. That's a great place to start for this, even if you're potentially listening to this podcast and you just look up a Kinder's questions and you ask yourself those three questions. That's a great place to start in terms of purpose.
And those three questions are,
Those three questions are, and I'm going to butcher them because they have specific wording and I can never remember exactly what they are. But essentially, if you had no limitation on money, say you've won lottery, $10 million, what would you decide to do with that money? So go wild, let your dreams run free. What are you going to decide to do? And then the next question is, let's pretend now that you have just checked in with the doctor and the doctor says you've got 5 years left to live. What are you going to do with those remaining 5 years? You now have less time than you thought you had. What are you going to prioritize? And so you don't have the megabucks anymore. You just have to choose for the next 5 years. What are you going to do? And the last question is, you go to the doctor this time and he says, sorry, I was wrong. Actually, unfortunately, you're going to die tomorrow. Now, what is it that you regret? What are the things that come to mind that you aren't able to do, that you thought you were going to be able to do, that you feel disappointed you weren't able to do? And the purpose of that last question is to ask you, what is the most important thing that you haven't done, that you want to do, that you actually could focus on right now?
yeah, some pretty deep questions. Very deep
Absolutely.
indeed. As I think I've told you, I have a dear friend that has weeks to live. In fact, I'll be seeing him again this week. And I should imagine, yeah, a lot of those questions have gone through his head while he has been able to think clearly, which isn't now the case. And in some respects, it's good because, I mean, how many times have you heard people say, gosh, if I only had one last time to say goodbye to that person before they went, but they went quickly. But between him and his wife, they've managed to invite, family and friends to do that. They've had that opportunity to say goodbye, and for him as well. Yeah, those are very deep, really important questions, and I must bring them up again with clients. They're really good, very, very
Yeah.
good.
And I think being able to raise those questions with clients and have the conversation before someone's in a dire situation
Yeah,
just can provide so much value.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, and it really puts into perspective those other ideas of taking cruises and going to Rome and all. None of those things matter really, do they?
Well,
Really.
sometimes.
They're enjoyable, but as somebody said, life really is about creating memories with people around you. You're never going to be on your deathbed regretting that you didn't buy that Russell Hobbs toaster. You're just not going to do that. But you may regret not being with friends more or family. These are the important things. And to some extent, money can help in that area. They can certainly do that and help and bring joy. It's not everything in life, but whether you like it or not, money is essential. We need it to eat, to live. And I guess our jobs is to make sure that our clients can do that with certainty and can get on with their lives happily without having to worry about that.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds like an excellent place to leave the podcast.
Awesome. That was enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.